Hello and welcome to another edition of the Lynn Lowdown. And today we have Emerson College Journalism professor. She's also a professor in residence at Emerson College, Miss Cheryl Jackson. How are you?
Fine. How are you?
I'm good. I'm just trying to keep a level head, taking
Yes.
walks and putting my phone down when I need to.
Exactly.
Uh,
Exactly.
Uh, uh, let's get right into it. You see what's happening around the country. What began last week and extended through the weekend, and yesterday just got amplified. What were your first thoughts when you first saw all this unraveling?
I thought when I saw George Floyd, the actual video of, a man's knee in his neck until he died, I hoped that it was a pivotal moment because we've seen this play out over and over again. And when they were unable to prove that he'd actually resisted arrest, then we knew that this was done for, just for fun. It wasn't done for a reason that they could explain in any way at all. And so I watched that, but I became sort of hurt by the fact that a lot of the people who were posting on social media were talking about the looting and not about the dying. And my point is, I made this point on my social media. If your first post or your only post is about the looting, then we know already that you care more about the looting than you did the dying. So I have to ask myself how people can look at George Floyd as he dies on the streets, begging for his mother and his life, and still be caught up in the idea of the looting and not really ever mention his dying. And you have to understand that there are some people who just cannot hear us.
Mm-hmm.
And there are some people who just cannot see our truth.
Yeah, a lot of people are just ignorantly make themselves blind to situations because in any situation, even if you're playing around, play fighting with a sibling or a friend, if you have them in the chokehold or anything and they tell you they can't breathe, the first thing you do is let go. If you have someone in a chokehold for more than probably 10, 20 seconds, you should let go. I mean, anything past 30 seconds, at that point, you should let go. And for that officer, 9 minutes, they said he had his knee on his neck. 9 minutes, he's telling them he can't breathe, and he didn't budge. He didn't move. It kind of shows that this seemed like it was premeditated.
Well, the one thing it seemed like to me was that the officer was intent on completing whatever he had started, or maybe he was aggravated by the people standing around saying that you are killing him, or maybe he thought the people standing around, no one would care about their video. But the one thing it seemed to me was that he was intent on doing exactly what he wanted to do, and if that meant killing George Floyd, then he was going to do that. He was not moved by the people saying he can't breathe. He was not moved by the people who said that you were killing him. And what we know for sure today is that the first thing police did was release a statement that said he died at the hospital. It was some kind of medical incident. And so had we not had the video, it would be another tragic death perpetuated by police that we would not have the answers to.
Yeah. And then to top that off, we have an independent medical examiner saying that he died from the asphyxiation. So they tried to cover it up. And that's one thing when I talk with some of my friends, they say a lot of cops, a lot of these officers that do these type of things, they do it and feel that they'll get away with it. They'll just get a little slap on the wrist, which is another reason why they feel like he was just had his hand in his pocket, not caring about the results.
Yeah, and he, in fact, that officer has gotten away with one thing after the other now that we see his record. I don't know if you know, but I have my own fight for justice in my hometown for the murder of my brother, who I believe was killed by a cop's family.
Mm-hmm.
And the cop was the first guy on the scene. My brother died with the cop's gun, and yet they ruled it a suicide. And so I am clear about police cover-up.
Mm-hmm.
I am clear that there are also good cops, because one of the people who helped me to kind of understand the evidence was another police officer. But there are people that are attracted to this business because they want to be bullies. There are also a lot of good police officers. But in my own case, the obfuscating that has gone on for years, yesterday we just won an appeal to move forward in our case after filing a federal civil rights lawsuit. And the lies that were perpetuated by the local media, a newspaper I had worked for a decade, to support the police narrative, it was astonishing. And had I not had ties to the press, had I not been a reporter in the past, had I not had the ability to exhume my brother's body for evidence, which cost thousands of dollars, and had I not been able to have firsthand access to the press, my brother's body, the whole story would have disappeared in my hometown. So I'm clear. So when I see this happen, I already know the path. And I already know that the police don't expect to have any kind of consequences. It's not that they plan some strategic way to get around it. They're just like, we're doing this and we will not have consequences. So those officers, I believe, who are perpetuating these kinds of acts, it is something that they have joined the force to do.
One thing we see is the people are fed up with all this, and the narrative on what I've seen on social media is the people have been saying the only reason they've been arrested is because of the uprising from the people, everybody that demanded that they arrested the officer, because initially he was not arrested, he was not charged with anything until the people decided to go and raise hell, and that's when they got the results. And it seems like everyone is just fed up with this.
Yeah, and I know the feeling of being fed up. I always say that all the resources I still had rage at times running into the injustice in my brother's case. While I don't believe that we have to have the violence, and I don't believe we have to have the looting, I do believe we have to have the protests, because when you have official misconduct by police, sometimes judges, the coroners, all these people, you have this official misconduct, you have to have the press involved. The press is your only answer to the corruption, because you can't get around their holding onto the files. Whenever the press reports the actual facts, like they did with George Floyd, people become outraged. And that's white people and Black people. There are a lot of people in these movements, and I've gone to a lot of marches. I've covered a lot of marches. There's a fair amount of those people who are white, and they are fed up too. And so I do think that your only answer to official and police corruption is to do something that gets the media's attention. Protesting does that. And while we do know that historically the looting, the destroying does bring about change, it also is not the way that I think is best. But I will say something else, and that is, at my protests I've had for my brother, which I've had about a dozen, I don't even leave litter behind. They're not. I just go, I protest, I don't leave any litter behind. But I always say this: if I was willing to let a group of protesters come into our town and tear it down, the FBI would have been in my case the next week. I would be closer to justice than I am, and now I'm 7 years still fighting for it. So people see that.
Yeah. So I just had this thought this morning of, we're gonna look, and when we, down the line, and when we look back in history, we're gonna see that 2016 was such an important year that the ripple effect from 2016 came into play in 2020. And I say that to say this: Colin Kaepernick, when he first was bringing awareness, this is what he was bringing awareness to, and nobody took him seriously. Everybody called him unpatriotic, un-American, and we've seen what happened with that as far as him trying to play in the NFL again. We've seen the ripple effects of that. Now, also 2016, we have the presidential election. Black women and also people of color warned us that if this is the person that you elect for president, these are the things that's going to happen. We heard it from every prominent black person. Hillary Clinton even told us. Just everyone that knew this president's character warned us, and still it showed that America's way of not listening to minorities or listening to women has them paying the big price now. And we saw that happen with what happened yesterday in DC.
Yeah, we did. And the thing about it is, we have Trump as president, and he is a guy who is a bully. He has a history of racism, of documented racism. The federal government actually sued him for discriminating against Blacks who were trying to rent his places. And so he has a history of racism. And I struggle with trying to figure out how to get around that, because in my community, like I said, Mike Pence is from that town. Most of the people that I know and I grew up with, they voted for this team of people. And I don't know what to do with that. I really don't know what to do with that, because it's very disappointing, because they know he's misogynist. They know he's a racist. They know that all of his, I really believed when he made fun of a disabled reporter on the air, I really did think it was over for him, and it was not. So the people and groups of people, I'm a Christian, I've gone to church for years, and the groups of people that I know, white people who are making an excuse about why they support this team, it just shows me that anything can happen. It just shows me that I didn't know even the people I thought I knew I didn't know, so.
Yeah, it's just, it's at this point, there's no defending his actions. You can't put it off. We've seen it from the first day he took office to now. It's just, it gets bad to worse each and every day. What we also saw, we saw the youth come together. We saw different people from different backgrounds come together this past Sunday in Boston, in downtown, to protest the injustice, starting at Dudley Station and walking all the way to the State House. We saw that. The ending was not how the organizers or many of the people wanted it to be, but overall, it was something that people needed and something that brought a lot of people together in fighting the same fight, which is fighting the fight against racism.
Right. Well, the one thing, I was proud to see people protesting. They were peacefully protesting. But if you notice the headlines around the country, they're all saying this: the protest started out peacefully. We had a good day and then it turned. And while I'm not one for conspiracies, I do believe from people I know that are attending protests. My children are attending protests in Los Angeles. And I know people are saying that it looks like when the sun comes down, there are groups of people rolling in cars who were not protesting earlier. And so maybe there are people, outsiders who are not protesters, who are taking advantage of this by the violence and the looting. And so, it didn't end well, but the peaceful protest is the idea. I was actually watching the news in Boston when the police officer threw a canister, I assume of tear gas, across where there were about, 5 young white men. And I don't know what had transpired before that, but one of the kids picked it up and threw it right back. It was probably a college kid, threw it back at the police officers. The police officer threw it back halfway through. So the police officer kind of runs and tackles this guy, and the guy gets away and runs from police, jumps the fence, and just goes on about his business. And so I don't think that's what the protesters planned for that night, that disrespect of police. So I am encouraged by police officers around the country, like in Michigan, in Indianapolis, Indiana, where I'm from, Indiana, where police officers saying, we're with you. We don't support this. And I think there are probably a lot more officers that feel that way, but don't know how to say it and to, walk over that blue line and be one of those people who says, I don't support it. But I am concerned because Black men, just like my brother, he was, like I say, shot to death. And then they just treated him like a dog in the streets. They didn't investigate. They didn't keep the clothing for analysis. They destroyed evidence. They gave the gun back to the suspects. I mean, it was just, he was nobody, and that right there is the thing that I intend to fight for the rest of my life, because it is something that happens over and over again. I mean, don't you know every Black man from the past has been stopped by police and harassed, no matter who they are.
Yeah. And we just had an incident yesterday in Louisville, Kentucky. A chef who just finally got, he got murdered, and it's just another thing we have to bring awareness to. We're bringing awareness to George Floyd, and now this happens. It's just been a horrible 3 or 4 weeks with the senseless deaths of people who did not deserve to die. And it's
True.
opening up dialogue, but I'm one to say at some point we need to stop with the dialogue and we need to have action. We need to have put in place things that's going to make this stop, because every time we have dialogue, it goes on and then it stops, and we just revert back to what's happening.
I do feel like this is a little different. It does feel like, you hear people from the civil rights movement saying that next generation didn't carry the torch. They just didn't. And then the next generation didn't. Maybe we have a generation here that will. Maybe this will continue. Maybe people really are tired of this enough that this can perpetuate a change. But when you have the president of the United States dog whistling the police to shoot, that's we're already dealing with people who have a tendency, certain ones who want to shoot or hurt or harm people. And then the president dog whistles them to go ahead and shoot. If there's looting, there's shooting or whatever. Yeah. And so we know that what he's saying to the police agencies is this: if you shoot them, I will support you. So he's not helping. He's escalating. But we know he's a racist. And so his agenda is just to get his own administration back on a track where he can look like he's doing what he's supposed to do. And he's a bully who likes a fight, and he wants to win this fight. So now today he's talking about getting the military involved, and he's already got, the National Guard all over the country. Trump is, he's poking the bear.
Yeah, the fascism at its finest. But Cheryl, if you have a lot of work that you've done in your journalism career, please let the people know if they want to go look at some of your work, where could they find it?
I have a webpage. It's if you Google Cheryl Jackson at Geller Media, I have a webpage that shows a lot of my work. My LinkedIn profile, my name is Cheryl Owsley, Owsley Jackson. So if you look at my LinkedIn profile, I have a lot of work there. And if you want to follow my brother's case, his name is Cary, Cary, Owsley, Owsley. And there is a link to what happened, a national story about what happened to him and our fight for justice for him. Also, if you Google Cheryl Jackson, Emerson College, all that stuff comes up.
There you go, Emerson College. That's the plug we're using in class of 2017. Woo, woo.
Yeah.
All right, Cheryl, thank you very much. This was appreciated.
Thank you.
This was a great conversation, and hopefully we can do it again down the line. And you and your family be safe and stay healthy.
You too, and thank you so much. And call me anytime.
All right, will do.
Thank you.
You guys have been watching the Lynn Lowdown. That was Cheryl Jackson. Have a great day, ladies and gentlemen.